those as they're going. So our promise for today, we're not going skydiving as much as I'd love to go skydiving today. So we're going to give you 60 minutes to teach you as much as we can, teach you everything that we know regarding event tracking, how we unlock different insights that can be applied to paid marketing. Scott will share his how this data is leveraged in campaigns. So again, we're doing a lot of the data event tracking setup, and Scott is actually executing on this. And lastly, we're going to show more on how it's done, so actually how we're going through and doing it, and less on theory. Just to save bandwidth, I'm going to cut my video here as we start going through the presentation. Alrighty, so as we continue, so what you'll learn today, number one, you'll learn common tracking issues that affect campaigns. Number two, how event tracking can increase ROAS. And number three, how advanced user data can drive marketing insights. So those are really the three topics that we'll be going through today, and hopefully you all can take this on and actually execute. So how is this training different? If you've been on one of the webinars that I've been holding the last couple of months, I think the big thing is we're very transparent content, so sharing the exact tactics that we are executing for other customers. Two, we'll be sharing what we implement for brands and what Scott implements for brands at Vervaunt, and how they work with their campaign management. And then you'll actually have two ways to execute and apply some of these tactics to your own business. So the ways to execute we'll be going through is at the end. It's following a lot of like the free guides and free content that we have out there, where obviously you can hire us to do that for you. A little bit about Elevar. So our focus is on on-site analytics. So basically everything pre-purchase. Founded the company in 2017. We specialize in data analysis and tagging for over 2,500 stores. We are an official Shopify Plus partner in the digital marketing vertical, which is a little bit unique since we actually don't execute digital marketing, but a lot of what we do helps support digital marketing. We really do three main things. We tag websites, we analyze them, and we fix them. There's a lot more fixing than analyzing, it seems, these days, but that's really the core of what we do. We have two apps on the Shopify App Store. Some of you on here, you may have utilized those. One's the Google Tag Manager Suite that automates the data layer setup and all the different marketing tracking that it has set up. And then we have a flagship app that helps support tagging, analysis, and monitoring, so error monitoring of all this tagging. And then we also have our Pro plans, which is our professional services. Myself, so this is myself and my two sons. It's been a little bit chaotic here the last couple of months because I have a 3-month-old now and an 18-month-old. So everyone at home, it's certainly made it fun, so a lot more time with the kids. But so I've been in e-commerce for 13 years myself. I've worked on hundreds, seemingly not thousands of different brands, and I've seen a lot of different range of brands that have scaled very quickly versus that have maybe not have scaled as quickly as they wanted to. Some of the brands that I've worked with personally and that we still work with at Elvar, Rothy's, Tuft & Needle, Le Creuset, Trivetkin, Alex Nani, Rebecca Minkoff, etc. Myself, in terms of my personal skill set and passion, is analytics and data and analytics. That's what I do. That's what I love, and that's what I'll be teaching my boys. Scott, you want to go through a little bit about Vervaunt?
Of course. So just like Elevar, we were founded in 2017. And as mentioned previously, we have two offerings. So one is the e-commerce technology and re-platform consultancy. And then the other side of the business, which I'm a part of, is the e-commerce paid media management. And we're also an official Shopify Plus partner, just like yourselves. And from my side of the business, we cover paid search, shopping, Amazon campaigns, Facebook, and display advertising. So pretty much the full suite of digital marketing. And most of our clients are mid-market, multi-channel retailers. So we're purely e-commerce, and we kind of deal with quite large clients in terms of the data that we handle and obviously the campaign budgets. And then about myself, a little bit less time than Brad in industry. If you just flick over the slide. So I started in paid media 6 years ago. And in those 6 years, I've estimated work on hundreds, but it's probably coming up like thousands in terms of search social campaigns. I've always worked agency side, so always having a roster of 5 to 15 clients at a time, and mostly focused on e-commerce. Some of those brands in that time, so David Austin Roses, who are a Vivant client, Salt Rock, Nails Inc., Jimmy Joy, and plenty more. One of the things I'm passionate about, which probably is why I'm on this webinar, is kind of data and Google Data Studio, how we use data to then tell stories, analyze, and improve our campaigns. Always been a big advocate of putting the data into paid advertising.
Awesome. All right. So now let's dig in. So we're going to start. So what is event tracking or tagging? And there's the nomenclature can confuse a lot of us, including ourselves. So when I talk about tagging and I hear Elevar and hear about us talking about tagging, so specifically with tagging for analytics, many of us historically have relied on Google Analytics for page view tracking. Where's traffic coming from? What's our source medium landing? What's our landing page analysis? But that there's a ceiling to that. The data that can provide you, the insights that I can provide you. So with tagging, what really this can help unlock is if you just look at this Rothy's product page, there are so many more interactions that a user can take on this page. So are they interacting with product thumbnails? Are they interacting with reviews? Are they interacting with a size guide? Are they adding the insoles upsell? Are they viewing more details? So all of these little interactions, and if you expand this out across the site, there's so much more data that a user is going through and ultimately telling you where this is leading them down their user journey to purchase. And this not only can help with conversion optimization, but as we'll be going through here shortly, this also helps with marketing. So Scott has the insights and the data available so that he can start tying this into different remarketing campaigns. So it's a big, and the other good thing about event tracking, and Scott will touch on this shortly, is all of this data, so all this event tracking that you're pushing into Google Analytics, this can then be pulled out into AdWords. So whether you think about your audience creation or the way you create segments inside of Google Analytics, all of that data, so all this event data, the event action, the event label, event category, all this data is in GA for you, and then you can create a segment and then apply that to an audience, and now you have that audience available in AdWords, which can be very powerful, especially when you start seeing things like customer lifetime value, total order count, et cetera, that can be synced into AdWords. And the good thing about event tracking is once you go through the process of actually setting up event tracking, what most of us, at least for myself, I think about event tracking for Google Analytics, but you can apply that same data and push that same data to your marketing pixels too. So Facebook, you can send anything that you want to Facebook. AdWords, same thing. Pinterest, Criteo, Klaviyo, all of these different marketing channels, you can send the same data. So if you have, let's say there's 10 unique interactions that you are taking on, or users taking on a website that you've deemed like this is very important, someone watching a video, somebody signing up for an email, somebody downloading a PDF, those are important actions and part of like your little micro funnel as you're evaluating success. That data can then be pushed into these platforms and they can be pulled out into different remarketing campaigns. So you're maximizing that dollar that you're spending in these different platforms, and really just creating that web. So we like to call the web of event data. So having all of this data being pushed to all of the marketing channels, so you can keep that messaging in sync across all of those marketing channels because you're creating those audiences based on the same data. So I'm going to show a few examples here. So this is just to go a little bit deeper into the marketing side of event tracking. So this is Diamondback Truck Covers, and so they have a very unique process on their site where you go through and you basically select the truck. So you tell them, I'm telling Diamondback that I drive a Chevy Colorado, five foot bed, and a couple other attributes. And so this data is being sent. So if you can see Scott, can you see the Pixel Helper Chrome extension?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Sometimes that doesn't come through on the video. So if you can actually see this data, and it's probably very small on your screen, but so this is a custom event that's being sent to Facebook, and it's actually sending, again, what I went through and selected as, again, telling Diamondback exactly what I have. So think about this data going to Facebook. Think about going to Klaviyo. So if Klaviyo has my email, this data that can then be sent to Klaviyo. So then when they're remarketing back to me or sending me newsletters or new product announcements, the imagery and the content, everything can be Chevy Colorado or just Chevy versus a Ford or another brand that it may not resonate with me. So this is one example. The second example is think about quizzes. So we're seeing quizzes just work. That's like the bottom line. They work, and more brands are utilizing them. They work in terms of acquisition, email acquisition, and they work in terms of driving conversion. So driving actual sales and dollars. So with quizzes, something that we don't see very often is, again, if you have a 5-question quiz, a 10-question quiz, you're asking users specific data, and they are telling you exactly what they want. So this is CoverFX, this is a customer of ours, so they have a couple different steps they're going through and trying to match you to the right foundation color, I believe. So all of these different examples, again, this is event tracking being sent to Facebook, and the same thing can be, the same data goes to Google Analytics and goes to Google AdWords, so you can evaluate what's the usage, are there certain combinations that are converting more, and then they can start tying back into some of the creative that they're utilizing as well. Last but not least, so if you don't have a quiz or you don't have a truck finder on your site, there's things as simple as watching a video. So this is Stio on a product page. They have videos. When someone plays a video, you just push an event. So we're just pushing an event to Facebook that they watch the video and then sending the video name. And then this data can then be used through different remarketing campaigns. So that's 3 examples of taking data, so taking event tagging or event tracking, and just honestly getting creative. Just get creative with it and push it into your different marketing channels in addition to Google Analytics. And it's all done through Google Tag Manager, which we'll be going through here in a little bit. So what are frustrations with tagging? This happens, this will really never go away. There's always going to be frustrations with tagging because things change, platforms change, requirements change, websites change. So number 1, the process is slow. So the quote unquote, I'm calling the old way of tagging required technical expertise, or maybe somebody that was a specialist in Google Tag Manager. Requirements documents are all over the place. There's spreadsheets and Google Docs and notes and Slacks, emails. So the process ends up being very slow. And the slowness, especially if you're Scott and he's getting ready to launch a new campaign, it's like they need tags implemented today. And even just the basics, even just conversion tags, you need campaigns, you need these tags implemented today. So if it takes a long time, it takes weeks or takes months, then the opportunity cost is, so it may not be a hard cost, but it's just the opportunity cost is expensive when you can't make those updates. So this is the moat. So sometimes for those of you that might own your website, you own the brand, you might feel like your website, there's a moat around it where you don't have access to make changes even though you want to. And that can be frustrating. Frustration number 3, it's complicated. So think about, there's landing page builders out there. So you have custom landing pages versus your native Shopify pages. So the Shoguns and Pageflies of the world, the tracking is going to be set up differently. Tagging is not the same. So tagging is not the same for Google Analytics as it is for Facebook, as it is for AdWords, etc. Even if you just look at the Chrome extensions, you have the Facebook Pixel helper, you have the GA tag assistant, you have AdWords event tracking. The naming conventions are different. So they're not unified, and let alone the requirements of how to set it up. They can't even get their name, like the naming convention right. So that can cause confusion as well and cause complications when you're like, hey, I want to set up this tag, but it actually needs to be implemented in a different manner. And that actually funnels down into your catalog, just something as basic as your product catalog. You might be sending SKU as a primary product ID to Merchant Center, but inside of Facebook, if you have potentially the auto sync in the Facebook, with Shopify, you're sending your product ID. So the IDs will be different between your feeds. And then when your IDs end up breaking or they don't match, then that can cause things like this. So if you're sending inaccurate data, which Scott can probably attest to, and he'll get a little bit into, so potentially your marketing messaging isn't matching. These are two of our teammates at Elevar. So thinking about like prospecting, lookalike audience campaigns. So you're creating a lookalike audience potentially off of inaccurate data, then you're just going to have a lower conversion rate because Facebook or Google or any other campaign is prospecting to the wrong audience. Tags break. So this is another common frustration that, again, it really afflicts because we get inbound requests almost daily, or we do get them daily on this with just tags breaking. So there's different warnings. What do they mean? Requirements change from either the platform or the brand or the marketing team. So these screenshots, these might look familiar to some of you on here. You start seeing these giant drops. So like, why did our Facebook tag match rate drop? Why does our Google Ads tag not matching? And then this will spin off all the different messaging. So email, Slack, text. Like, when is this going to get fixed? So if you suffered from tags breaking in the past, then you hopefully can relate to this. Scott, can you share some of your experiences of tag frustrations that have affected your paid campaigns?
Yeah, I'll probably go into a lot more in a bit, but some tag frustrations, it can just be the fact there are none. So yeah, going into the common paid tracking issues we have, the first one is just no tracking. And this can happen for various reasons. It's most common on new sites or new activity. But the worst thing to see from a paid site is all those zeros on kind of GA or in our AdWords data. And this can, one, delay campaigns, obviously, if we have to go back and forth with a development team and we don't have access to maybe Google Tag Manager. There's no historical data if we're taking on a new client and there's just been no data previously in their GA or AdWords or Facebook account. We can't inform decisions based off that. So it can really slow down our process, and we'd have to probably say something like, it's going to take us a couple months just to go in a data gathering phase and then optimize from there. And it's not just limited just to the site-wide either. It can be anything from just Google Ads never being connected to analytics, not passing through the click data. It can just be having no remarketing audience set up from the go. So part of what we do when we take on a client, we'll just audit their analytics so it's good from our perspective. But as you said before, there can be delays if we're having to go through a development team. If we can't implement it ourselves, the worst case is we have to wait 7 days until it goes through some kind of tickets and then it's solved. Or hopefully we can do it ourselves internally, but always would want to rely on a developer depending on the build. And then what is also frustrating just with no tracking is then double tracking. It's almost as worse having double firing pixels going across the site. Quite common with Facebook. So one example I had was a client of mine a couple of years ago came on board as a fresh new client, and they're really happy with their Facebook marketing. They had 5-to-1 ROAS across all campaigns, and they said, okay, get us to 8-to-1 in the next few months. Within 24 hours, I'd half that to 2.5 ROAS because I found a double firing pixel issue. I was like, all this success and data you've had in the last 6 months has been falsified. And if you don't catch those, obviously you could be spending money into basically holes of non-performance, which is the worst case scenario. So double tracking just can be as bad as no tracking because you might just end up putting a lot of budget into campaigns that aren't actually either profitable or as profitable as you think. So that is kind of the main thing there. And then data discrepancies are a little bit different. So mostly seen again if you're trying to compare analytic sources. Example on the right is a real recent example of a new client we had. So they came on board, and as you can see, there's 3 campaigns in those rows, and there's 2 on top which are very different in terms of their ROAS, and that is because in data layer on the Facebook pixel, it wasn't pulling in different currencies. It was pulling any numeric value as euros, and those 2 ones on top are yen. So the yen currency was pulling through as euros, and that means everything is inflated. The ROAS is super high, and what that actually affects then is Facebook will optimize more aggressively. If you're kind of optimizing towards ROAS, kind of naturally, the algorithm will kick in, go, okay, campaign 2 has an awesome 4,500 ROAS, and it will just go for it. And obviously that can start spending money to a negative effect without seeing the real data. And you can also be looking at different attribution models. So if you're looking at GA, that can be running off a last click model. And then if you're looking in Facebook, you can be looking at a 1-day click window, which isn't just last click, that will just be happening on the day of the click, up to a 28-day view window as well. So you're going to have discrepancies being applied across the campaign. So you need to take that into account. And the GCLID, which is the click ID appended from a Google account, what I was saying before about if you don't have your AdWords linked to your analytics, it can't read that it's a paid visitor come in. It will go through as not set, or even worse, like direct or organic. That is most common if you just don't connect them, but we have seen those issues actually coming up in campaigns where they are connected. We had an issue where I think using a third-party Google shopping tool, it was scraping out the GCLID and we couldn't track that performance for a while until that was rectified. So those discrepancies are also very hard to work with.
Awesome.
And then the
Just want to
last
jump
one,
in and address
sorry, yeah.
I was gonna say there are some questions coming in, so I just want
Oh,
to
lovely.
acknowledge that I see them. So I'll when we break to the next section, I'll jump in and try to address some of those. But keep going, Scott. Sorry.
Awesome, no worries. And then just the last point on round, like, as I said, with the paid issues is we generally, as a paid consultant, will have this lack of expertise unless we've taken training ourselves, took some time to learn Google Tag Manager. So when you're dealing with paid teams, it's not actually expected for them to have these skills. So this is where, again, it causes those delays. Obviously, tools like Elevar help us. And can, with it's all installed, we can go further. But if Google Tag Manager isn't installed, again, just with a one-time deployment from a developer, it can really kind of help our job from our side. I think that is probably my favorite thing about Google Tag Manager is it allows me to go past the development teams to get my stuff prioritized while they can work on their to-do list and not put mine 6 or 7
Yep.
tickets below.
Yep. Awesome. So I'm gonna, before I jump into our next section, I'll just answer some of these questions. So there's a question on are there any examples of non-development team related breakage sessions? So if I just let me go back to those previous screens here. So we see some of these breakages. So are any examples for non-development teams? So by development team, I'm assuming something's deployed and a tag or a variable breaks. Yeah, there's a lot. So let's say you are updating your product feed and the product feed that's being sent to different platforms and your ID changes. So the ID changes from, again, product ID to SKU or something similar. So that can break your dynamic product remarketing match rate, which is actually the screenshot here you're seeing with the match content IDs. So that's technically really, I wouldn't consider that a code deployment per se to the site. So that's something common. New landing pages. So if you're spinning up a new landing page, whether again you're using any of the dozens of different landing pages out there, and you're driving traffic there, and you're considering that page to be more like a product page, it might even have an add to cart. Most of those landing pages, they're not going to have the view content, the add to cart, some of those other events firing. So even though it's not necessarily an error, it's like the ghost errors. You don't even know you have a problem because nothing's really being tracked. Other things specific with Google Tag Manager, so variable names change or variables start becoming undefined or null, especially with some of the browsers. So something that we've seen, and we rolled out a new monitoring feature 3 or 4 months ago, and we're not surprisingly seeing more errors in-app Safari. So people that are interacting with ads that are in-app, like in-app within Facebook. So we're seeing like a larger discrepancy and just data collection lacking there. So yeah, there's a lot. Great question. It's definitely not always just from a code deployment. And then there's another question about tracking multiple views of images for product to GA via GTM. Yeah, so I'm going to save this one for last when we get into more like the how-to, like how to actually implement some of this tracking. All right. So this was I skipped over the screen, but this was something I think as us from a core company value for us at Elevar is we on the data analyst side, like we should be the ones that know about something breaking first. We should not have to rely on Scott or those that are responsible for executing the marketing campaigns to tell us like, hey, this is broke and it's costing us a lot of money. So that's something that as a core, like we're trying to continue to improve. I mean, we're obviously not perfect at this yet, but that's why we're adding more tools to our own services for ensuring that we know before anyone else does. That way, that the issue can be fixed fast. All right, so let's get into the next section here. So with all the different frustrations or potential problems that come up, and I know everyone might not have all of those issues or even any of those issues, but why bother with advanced event tracking? So maybe even you're just okay with the standard event tracking. So we all, at the end of the day, we're doing all this and we're marketing, we're spending money, we all need to increase conversion rate ultimately so we can make more money, so we can hit our revenue goals, hit our different targets. And we need our campaigns to work harder for us. And with being in e-commerce, which I'm assuming most of, if not all of you are on this webinar, with COVID hitting, it's obviously it's allowed marketing budgets to work a lot more efficiently for you. So in addition to CPMs going way down, that we're seeing so return on ad spends and just your cost per transaction. ROAS going up, cost per transaction going down. So your dollars are working harder for you. But ultimately, as before COVID happened, this was a big focus of us and a big request or demand for us is just need to increase ROAS through more data, getting remarketing campaigns to perform better. At the end of the day, it's all about increasing conversion rate. But it's complicated. So just consider these two very common scenarios. So you hold a 50% off flash sale, conversion rate spikes, celebrate, but average order value drops. So maybe it might not drop by 50%, but it might drop by 30%. But ultimately, when you're looking at your revenue, it's somewhat flat. So again, conversion rate increases, but revenue is ultimately flat. And that's if you aren't measuring revenue per user, revenue per visitor as one of your metrics, then you should, because it's going to even out. It's going to take those spikes or dips in conversion rate and average order value and even that out, so you can get more of like that true revenue per visitor. The second example, so you double down a campaign on Facebook. So using the example that Scott sent, so if a campaign is over optimizing based on a currency error, you see session spike, conversion rate tanks. So what went wrong in that scenario? And that is a data specific scenario. So the campaign is optimizing. We've seen this happen. We had a customer that had this happen. They had a fraudulent order. It's like a $50,000 order from some obscure country, obscure device, and Facebook just started driving a ton of traffic to it, and then everything tanked. Like all the big metrics tanked, conversion rate. And it was just like, what's going on? What happened? I thought it was a code issue or a site speed issue. And it was just bad traffic, just dirty traffic. When it comes to just general conversion optimization, in this example number 2, it could be either if it was a good campaign, there's no upsells, or maybe you're not remarketing to that campaign. There's no cross-channel promotion. So again, if someone came in from this session, but they weren't ready to buy right away, if you don't have that data available on other platforms, even just AdWords, they're not seeing that same messaging to, again, inch them down farther along the funnel. This is a visual we've been using a lot more this year. This is the dream versus reality. So when it comes to conversion rate optimization, the dream is we start getting data driven, and our conversion rate is going to go up by 5x. The reality is I don't want to call it a slow process. It's an incremental process. So the going from a 0.5% to 5% conversion rate, that's a unicorn status. It just doesn't happen. The reality line is something that is much more realistic, and we see this happen over and over again when you stay consistent. So you put the data foundation in place, you put that process in place, and then you actually act on that data. So you're taking action on that data in both your conversion optimization testing, but also using that data in your marketing campaigns to, again, slowly improve those campaigns and your return on that. So again, it takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes patience to really execute this over time, but it does pay off. So what are some other reasons? So another reason, like why go through the process of implementing this event tracking, is you need to have a clear picture of who the user is and what is impacting their decision. So the who is, think about property data. So the easiest one is just gender, or even what are they shopping for? Are they shopping for their kids? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? So that's what we mean about who the user is, and we can infer a lot of that, and it's not just gender based. It can be, going back to the Diamondback truck example. If I don't drive a Chevy, but if I did, they would know, like, I drive a Chevy Silverado, I think it was. So that would be more like the who, and then the what. So the what is impacting their decision. That is me. So if I'm coming in through that Chevy campaign, what am I doing on that product page? Are there spec guides that I'm downloading? If I view the spec guide, does that help me convert? So, or does it make me more confused and end up falling off? So the what is that's all the event tracking that is set up across the site. And with that event tracking, once that's sent into Google Analytics, you can actually view conversion rates. So you can see the conversion rate for all of those different interactions. So what's a conversion rate people that view a size guide? What's a conversion rate for people that view your additional images? That's the what. So that is how we can infer what is impacting their decision, and actually have real data behind it. What is unique about your purchase journey? So when you think about your website, it's not just conversion rate. It's not just purchase conversion rate. The days of you throw one ad out there, and you guys know that you're on this webinar, so you know this, but the other people maybe not, maybe still don't realize this, where you just throw one ad out there and then you're expecting a purchase right away. It just doesn't happen. So breaking down your funnel into micro conversions so they can be pulled into either personalization tests or they can be pulled into your marketing audiences. So percentage of email signups, percentage of video plays, so size chart click, total, the sizes they're filtered by, FAQs read. Just think about a landing page. So someone that you're driving to a landing page, a 5-second visit, is that as valuable as someone that was on the landing page for 50 seconds, especially if it's a longer storytelling landing page. So if you break your funnel down, you want to find like where your leaky bucket is. So where's the leaky bucket where people are falling off? So this is an example of looking at a custom report from Google Analytics. All of the columns that you see on top, these are all created from custom event tracking. So we can see, just based on source medium, you can see all these different examples. So you can see in this report, we've translated a lot of those custom events into custom metrics. So how many video plays, what's the percentage of email signups, what's the number of 50% scroll and 30 seconds on page, et cetera. So so if you're just looking at this, what stands out? So if I'm going to ask you a question, what stands out to you in this report if you were to just look at this and do some analysis? To me, what I see is rule number 10, we see extremely high conversion rate for email signups. So for this campaign, this might be somewhere where Scott is taking this campaign and he's like the conversion for this, the conversion in Facebook is email signups versus purchase. So then you can get them onto the email list, and then you start looking at email, like your email channel. You'll see that that has a much higher initiate checkout or even purchase conversion rate or add to cart conversion rate. So that is just a very basic example of looking at evaluating campaigns. I'm looking at them a little bit farther up the funnel and not just always purchase conversions. So where to start with event tracking? So we've been talking a lot about the what it is, what are the frustrations, why even bother? So where to start? So what I like to ask is what is my biggest gap in the shopping funnel? So if it's my site, what's the biggest gap? So think about that for you. If you are evaluating your site, where's the biggest gap? Is it getting people to product pages? Is it getting people to add to cart? Is it getting people to checkout once they add to cart? What landing pages? I'm going to use that dirty word, bounce rate. No, many don't like bounce rate. It is a vanity metric. However, it can have value, especially if you combine it with the time on page, and even scroll. I mean, scroll is almost getting to be a vanity metric as well, but it's more about engagement. But what landing pages have a high bounce rate, and then start breaking them down from there. What pages have the highest exit rate? So if someone's making their way through your site, are there certain pages that have a high exit rate? Maybe it's your shipping page, maybe it's your return page, maybe it's your about page. Do you have abandoned cart remarketing email set up? So again, something very basic is 3 email sequence. So you can start getting people onto emails, getting them engaged, and then seeing where they're ultimately falling off that funnel. What type of products have the highest view to add to carts? So what products could you start to promote more? And then what generic search campaigns have lowest ROAS? So what you can do with this, if there are certain campaigns, is if you're driving traffic to collection pages or custom landing pages, if you have event tracking set up, understanding what people are doing on those pages, then you can potentially tie that back in to either cut off that campaign or modify. How to tag your site. So if you know Elevar and obviously with Vervaunt and Scott, we use Google Tag Manager. That's the way we do it. Number 1, map out your tag plan. So and it can be just a simple spreadsheet. And when we send out the replay, we'll send you example spreadsheets that you can use and copy for yourself. But just map out your tag plan. So where do you want to get tagging? And then either you could do the old way of manually tagging it, so going through finding click classes, et cetera, or you can do it visually and codeless way. We have a free Chrome extension that you can use. You can point and click on your site and add event tracking. It'll automatically add the tag and trigger to Google Tag Manager for you. But again, how to tag your site, Google Tag Manager is the way. At the end, we'll share so that we have a ton of free videos and resources that if you're new or not comfortable with Google Tag Manager and you want to do it yourself and you want to learn how to do it, we have a ton of content and training that It's just like this, except I'm actually in Google Tag Manager showing you how to do it. All right, so I am going to kick it back to you, Scott, where we'll start to go into some of the best practices for paid media and how you take some of this event and put it into action.
Lovely, thank you. Yes, some quick paid best practices, and the quickest one here will be reiterating that we have to test before launch. Ensuring that all tracking is working is absolutely vital to what we do on the paid media side, and we don't want to be spending time fixing issues whilst either the campaign is spending budget or is paused. There's been too many times in my career that maybe a client has said, we're going into sale this weekend, it's a new landing page, and then you pretty much have to email them back on the same day saying there's no tracking on that landing page. And then it's a standoff between whether sale is only for 3 days and we need it to basically be promoted. So you can end up flying blinds, which is the worst case scenario from our side, because we can't report on ROAS. We don't know what we did was effective. But this also goes across kind of new sites, migrations. As Brad said earlier, there's so many tags nowadays between pixels, your GA tags, your Google AdWords linking to analytics. If you're going to a new analytics profile, you need to set all that up again. So testing that, obviously, all in a dev stage is what we want to be doing. We don't want to be launching a new site and then find out that maybe the shopping feed's gone down, or kind of the tracking has just dropped off, and then spending a couple of weeks until we get back to normality, as again, we'll just be flying blind if we don't know if our campaigns are having the effect they're used to. So that's the most simple one there. But then the next one is the more data that we have, the better. Brad was touching upon this as well. Obviously the most common ones we've touched on already around button clicks, logins, downloads, add to carts, social link engagement. And where this comes into paid is we can obviously optimize towards this, especially done on Facebook advertising. Say if you launch a campaign, Facebook has to go into a learning phase, and it can go up to kind of 50 purchases until it starts to really kick in the algorithm and optimize towards it. So what will happen is if we can't reach those 50 purchases, if there's not enough volume, we might take one step back and go, okay, we've got to optimize towards initiate checkouts or add to carts. And if we hit 50 of those, then the Facebook algorithm can take over and we can scale that campaign potentially more effectively, as long as we're paying attention to the overall metric we're looking for, which is purchases and then ROAS. And then the advanced event side, again, touched upon earlier on video plays and subscription purchases and how we can push stuff like lifetime value into this is essential. Scroll depth, I think, is an underutilized one. When you're talking about, earlier around like time on site, bounce rate, scroll depth is such a good metric to know they got, 75%, 100% down, maybe a landing page you put together, which is a big more content piece, and then retarget towards them. And then the quiz start and completions and the metrics, we can go into them. I'm going to go into how we use those in paid as well. And then something just from a best practice side, what we do, which isn't quite the on-site tagging, but it's the actual URL tagging. It's really important what we do here. So I'll put an example one up for if you were to click on this link, you put in the UTM source as the webinar, the medium, which is the link click, campaign as webinar May, and then the keyword basically is slide 40. The reason we do this is if you're analyzing data historically, you need these links to be nice and clean to cut through if you're going through reporting, your analytics, maybe pushing it to Data Studio. The best one to look at is a reoccurring event. So something like Black Friday, you're looking at maybe your last 3 years of performance between doing 2020. If you've just done your UTM and you're tracking before as the campaign Black Friday and not Black Friday 17, 18, 19, you suddenly have this cluster of data that's all the same, which you can't compare as easily. Where if you've been tagging them as Black Friday 17, 18, 19 throughout the years, it just makes your job a lot easier in hindsight. And I put a little link to the campaign URL builder, which is the Google Dev tool on that page. And then something which I think we should spend time on from a paid team is just setting these hypotheses that as we go along. So if we are about to go into a test, what exactly are we wanting to push out? So maybe we're putting together a copy test and we want to know if people who have viewed the sizing page on a website, are they going to be more susceptible to maybe returns messaging, as you know, if they're looking at size and they're obviously worried about returns, or are they still going to be interested in the general branding message of the free shipping? And then we gather that data, analyze it, crunch it down on according to what we were setting, and then obviously we'll repeat these forever. Conversion rate optimization and ad optimization isn't something you do for 1 month or 2 months and then rest up and say my campaigns are now solid. This is something, you know, we've had clients at Vivant since we started in 2017, and we're still testing and learning and changing copy as we go on. And then I think something we forget as well is sharing this data. I've definitely been guilty of it in my career, and I know a lot of paid teams and professionals are, is you do these tests, but sometimes you do them in your little silo and you don't share this data out to the developers who have kindly set up all the tracking for you, or the SEO team who are trying to optimize you know, their blog contents, their metadata, and we're just sitting on this data. And then most importantly, back to the clients that we do. So we want to be sharing these tests that we're doing and then obviously improving their website performance. I think any team doing this, just sharing it across in a nice, easy to read deck or report, kind of makes our job a lot easier. And then moving into how we actually use this data into our optimization efforts, I think this is the nice stuff here. So Brad was talking about this earlier. So the fun part of doing all this event tracking that Elevar can set up is we can create these audiences for retargeting. So any event label, action, or category that we put in, we simply have to go into GA, into the admin part, and set up an audience based on conditions. And then any audience that has been triggered, event, we can create an audience out of. So this is very nice for us to be able to say, okay, maybe people who clicked on the webinar signups, we can then target them later with specific ad copy, which is on the next slide. So my favorite or least used technique on AdWords is you can use if statements in your ad copy. It looks obviously crazy. That's not how the advert will look to a user, but you can start using if statements based on the events you've put. So an example one here, if we were using this webinar as an example, we can say if the audience was in the webinar signups, we could say, okay, you can have a free Google Ads audit, push them to a different landing page. But then if they weren't, they just get the generic ad copy. And this can be used across display and retargeting as well. But if you can think about all the ways you can use this to message better in a retargeting way, that potentially if someone completed the quiz and they selected maybe they had fine or frizzy hair, you could change your ad copy to actually appeal to them when they're searching for your brand later, and it would just be so much more personalized, and you can send these people in different places. I can see a question just came through about, do I have a go-to resource to learn about these? So on the bottom of this slide, which we will send out, there is the generic support Google one, which is actually very informative about how to use these if statements. And I can send some stuff across as well after the slides. Oh, Zoom is hiding it. I see. So yeah, when we send that out, you will be able to see that. But there are some very good resources that I can share as well. So an example.
Sounds like a new blog post on your site.
I was thinking that when I was putting these slides together, I was like, we need to do some follow-up content on this. Yeah. So building these personas, as I was saying, if there's a quiz, you can basically, as they click on, so for this one, if their undertone is golden, neutral, or pink, we can log this behavior and then we can retarget towards it. So we can bucket these audiences based on the identifiers and create a bit of a persona about the people who are using the website. And then later on, if they're coming back to the brands, you know, maybe they did become a customer, maybe they didn't, our adverts can be created at whether they're on the search or whether they're on retargeting display banners or on Facebook. We can make sure they're at least seeing maybe the right model shots, the right hair shots, the right makeup. And other examples, like that's just for makeup, you could use stuff, like I said, around dry, curly, or gray hair, or on alcohol, you can use like craft beer, lager, and ciders if they've got a subscription going. So there's many ways we can use this. And then to send advanced order data, kind of the out-of-the-box events that the channels don't have, my biggest one is definitely customer lifetime value, especially if we're working with subscription-based clients. We can maybe spend a little bit more on acquisition if we know what the customer lifetime value is. So one of my clients used to be kind of a replenishable drink, and we could maybe optimize harder towards a certain maybe prospecting audience. If they wanted their meal replacements, maybe they're more, maybe they're a vegan audience, maybe they're an athletic audience, but we'd know that over time, these people would come back, and maybe their average subscription length is a really good metric as well, to know that if someone acquires through Google Ads for maybe say $15, that over time their replenishable subscription rate is like $40, then your lifetime value there allows us to prospect a little bit harder, a bit more budget, which is also always very good from our side to know it's not going through there. So
cool. Jacqueline, I see your question about what quiz tools do you recommend. Honestly, I don't have a go-to. There's a lot of different types. Bucket.io. Some just use I think Form. No. Gosh, I forget the name. There's a couple others that our customers have utilized. The names escape me off the top of my head, but I can put those into a follow-up email. Just a few example quiz companies.
So some are starting to do it through like messengers as well, like creating
Yeah.
messenger bots who are doing the quiz tools on the Facebook, and you can push out that event data as well, which is really cool.
Yep. All right, so how to put this into action? So what can you do with this data? So optimization takes time. So benchmark where you are today. Where's the biggest revenue opportunity to start? And start there first. And this is where I was going through. You're looking at your funnel and different. It could be just your homepage. If you're driving a lot of traffic to a homepage or a landing page, and you're struggling getting people to that next page, just focus on that. I think the biggest thing is don't do 10 average optimizations. Find 2 to 3 and do them great. And it could be on-site optimization. It could be optimizing a campaign. Generally, having these work both in tandem can be the best. But again, don't try to spread yourself too thin and do too many things. Just try to do 2 to 3 great, and then build that repeatable process. How do you determine? I'm going to come back to that question, Stockton. Build a repeatable process. So analyze, implement, review, and repeat. And this is, again, it's getting yourself and your team in that process of going through that. So what can you do with this? Going back to the question, what can you do with this data? On the remarketing side, Scott, this is definitely in your world, so I'll let you jump in and talk to different
So
statements here.
as I was just touched upon on what I was just saying, there's so much we can do with this data on the full remarketing audience side and communicate the right message at the right time. And as Brad has put out here, it goes from awareness through to consideration, decision, and loyalty, which pretty much how you want to put it in terms of what you're looking at. So if they've only looked at the homepage, blog, and maybe your landing pages, we'd consider pushing out maybe more branded, maybe more video-based advertising to get them into that consideration phase. We don't want to go hard on someone who's only ever been to the homepage or blog to, buy now, buy now, buy now, because it's probably not going to sit well with them. So we basically want to push people through these stages from awareness and then into consideration when they've looked at like the shipping and returns page. As I said earlier, if someone's been on your shipping and returns page, they're in that consideration stage. And if we know they've been on the returns page, we might promote stuff like the return policy in an advert copy, just to reassure them that maybe they have 28 days and free returns if it doesn't fit or they don't like it. And then it's again pushing them from consideration through to decision. So then add it to cart, initiate a checkout, and here the common practices around, this is the quick, easy sell. If they've initiated checkout but not purchased, we can go back to them with basically completing their order. My personal suggestion is don't go straight away with the discount code. But if they start to maybe fall off and they've entered the initiate checkout stage, and then maybe after 4 or 5 days they haven't purchased, then maybe you can set those time lags up, and then on the 5th day send them something to then convert. Here's 10% off your order, and that might be the final push they're looking for. And then those price comparison ones you say as well are really good. And loyalty and lookalikes are massive. That's where lifetime value comes in. And I'd say for this stage, if you've acquired someone during a sale period, this is one of the biggest areas to focus in, because they've potentially entered the brand as only a sale customer, and moving them onto basically a full price customer and increasing the lifetime value, I think, is one of the biggest challenges we have as marketers, just not to be a sale brand, to push those clients into kind of loyal advocates of your brand.
What are some examples, some quick examples, since we have about 5 minutes left? What's the number one tactic that someone could take away if they came in through a sale and converting them into into a full price. And by the way, we did not plan this ahead of time. I'm putting you on the spot, Scott.
So some of the tactics I've seen used, sometimes just promoting the community, so you have a good community around the brand, and actually almost humanizing the brand to them, so they've made the purchase and it's just a sale item. And then if you can then demonstrate value, maybe not going for, if you're selling stuff like dresses or makeup, looking at, for example, dresses, they're not going to buy a dress maybe the next week, the next 2 weeks. They might buy something again like in 2 months or 3 months time. So you have that lead time to just work on the brand recall, maybe send some blog pieces out, again, some video content, or promoting them to become a social follower. And if you're using a loyalty program as well, there's a lot of options in kind of enabling that. If you're a replenishable product, you don't want someone to buy maybe their first batch at a discount and then not buy basically a replenishment in 30 days. So I think that is, you can do it a lot through paid, but I think here we're looking at how does this fit into like Klaviyo. If you've segmented these lists into Klaviyo, what can you provide them via email, which is good content, how to use their products, maybe again the community behind your product, the case studies, and then pushing that through. So when that churn time hits, where it's like 28 days, it's time to repurchase. Obviously, send out a repurchase email as well to remind them. But hopefully, you've done enough in that first month and been basically a nice brand to them is what they're looking for.
Awesome. So this is a real example. This is a customer. We added event tracking September and just started using that data, so that you saw the dream versus reality slide before. This is following that reality slide. Again, it's incremental, but now it positioned the brand in a completely different manner than where they were September. And as you can see, it wasn't just riding the Q4 wave, it's continued into January, February, and even March and beyond. So one of the things I'll share in the follow-up email is this is our what I call our tag cheat sheet. So this is, if you're not a big Excel doc fan, this might make your eyes hurt. However, this is something we do in our audit process. Is we go through just identifying what are the different channels, how's it currently implemented, and then go through and just annotate all the different standard events. Does it need a catalog feed? What are the advanced events, and make sure that we're ticking off the boxes to keep them consistent across all the channels. The other items, so when Scott was going through the different quizzes, so creating the persona values, so what data would be valuable besides page or event data that you can leverage in a remarketing campaign. So again, just create a list of what's unique to your business. Going back to Diamondback covers example of a truck. That's something that does require getting your hands a little bit more dirty in Tag Manager, or having us do it. But that is something that, again, create those persona variables so you can apply those and push those to different channels. As I just said here, got ahead of the slide, so apply variables to the marketing tags. How to analyze your event data. So there are a couple different ways here. So building custom reports, basic event report data can be cumbersome inside of GA. So whether you're using building custom reports inside of analytics, whether you're using our tool, Elevar, our flagship app, Stockton, answer your question on how to determine the biggest revenue opportunity. That's exactly what our insights feature is inside of our app. There's a little slider where you can say, if I take my product view to add to cart from 15% to 20%, you can see the revenue opportunity improvement there, or just the revenue opportunity, and then compare and see where the biggest funnels are. Otherwise, you can do that through back of the math napkin with analytics. But for me personally, we use our tool, but it's looking at those different segments and comparing. So you're going after the lowest hanging fruit, the biggest opportunity, using calculated metrics, so custom metric and calculated metrics. That's what I showed in that slide that had the 12 different columns. There's a link, so again, you'll get the deck to this. This links to a video where I show you how to do that, and evaluate your top landing pages or product pages. Again, start small, take action. So I think you have a couple slides here. We'll try to run through this quickly.
Yeah, I'll go very quickly. Attribution is a topic I could probably talk about for another hour, so 60 seconds will do. So approaching all this, we have to define our attribution model per channel. I think we've touched on Facebook has different attribution models to Google Ads. So defining this and being aware of this before we run campaigns is what we have to be. Having questions around why does my Facebook ROAS not match my GA ROAS is a very common one, and pretty much maybe never will. So there's always going to be discrepancies, but you have to be aware of what ones to be aware of, and then also locate your source of truth. As a brand, having that source of truth, whether it be GA, last click, whether you have Facebook as your source of truth in terms of the Facebook campaigns, or using a third party to kind of piece this all together. You can even use stuff like Google Sheets and Google Data Studio just to allow for connectors to pull in multiple models for easy comparison, which is most of our clients do. We don't rely on last click to then run across all campaigns. We can segment to look at other ones. And then just touch upon that briefly, is pulling it into Excel document data studio. Is there a best way? Not really. It's based on your needs and the needs of who needs that data and reports. We have a number of clients who want that raw data to analyze and put into pivot tables and send on and do their own analysis, but you're pretty much looking at static data and automated data. Excel will be easier to work with that raw data, and Google Data Studio is something you set up previous to having that data to then create visualizations and be very nice to look at and maybe send on to other users. But again, a huge topic I could speak on for a couple of hours done in 60 seconds.
Yeah. Awesome. And just to translate the connector part, if anyone is not familiar with, so if you want to use Google Data Studio or even Google Sheets, Supermetrics that's probably the most, or it is the most popular connector out there.
Supermetrics is definitely what we use at Vivant, and probably what I recommend after I've used it for about 3 years in Sheets and Data Studio.
Yep. All right, so let me just check the other questions in here. Don't think we have anything else. So how can we help? So from the Elevar side, as I mentioned, we have it's called the Art of Tagging. You can get to it even if you just go to our homepage. There's 25 videos. They're about 10 to 15 minutes each, and they go through GTM basics, event tracking, Facebook tagging, AdWords tagging, how to analyze. So this is the DIY. So if you want to learn how to do it yourself, I go through and I'm actually showing how to do it within Tag Manager. The Google Tag Manager suite. So if you don't have a data layer, or you're not happy with how yours is reporting, or you just don't trust your data, so this is our app on the Shopify App Store. It's called the Google Tag Manager suite. We also have, I think, at least there's Vivek, I think, was tagging the site while he's on the webinar. He chatted in, but we have a Chrome extension that allows you to point and click to create the event tags. So these are Google Analytics event tags, and then you can use the same trigger to send that data to Facebook, AdWords, etc. So this is more of the visual codeless type of tagging that you can do. And this is something new that we rolled out earlier in the year. So this is our monitoring. So we now monitor all marketing tags. So anything running through Google Tag Manager, we monitor this for you, and we start alerting of errors. So if anything becomes undefined, null, etc., we'll know right away and you'll get alerted. So I'm very excited because last year was a huge year of just us getting notifications all the time of things breaking and coming in to fix, and that can be very expensive for Scott and other similar marketing teams. And then last but not least, on the Elevar side, so we do have a 1-year offer that we're running right now. It's $1,000 for 12 months, and basically it gets a lot of the done for you. So we actually go through and do all the tagging. It comes with our Google Tag Manager suite, which is normally $200. It has the event builder. There's a bunch of different additional add-ons that we have here. So if you are in need of tagging and you want it done for you instead of a DIY, this is something it's pretty awesome deal. So you can either book a call with us to learn more. We can learn more about your challenges or needs, or you can, if you're ready to go, you can obviously just sign up on our site, and then we'll get you onboarded and start learning what tagging and tracking needs to be implemented for you. And if you just want to talk, if you just have general questions, just let us know. You can we'll hop on a call and see how we can help you out. And then Scott, I think you guys have a free audit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'd love to help with anyone who has any questions from kind of today's details, but also if you want us to review your campaigns and suggest for improvements for you and your team, we're happy to do so. So we'll do a detailed search and social audit off the back of this webinar, and then where event tracking can help your campaigns based on your analytics and current performance. Just feel free to drop me an email at scott@vivant.com, or follow and DM me on Twitter at Scright, SERIGHT. Yeah, happy to answer any follow-up questions as well. I know Patrick had a few questions, but he had to jump off early, so feel free to message me.
All right. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer if anyone that's still on, if you have any questions. Does anybody have any questions? If so, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can get them taken care of. We'll wait a minute or so, see if any questions come in. So while we're waiting, I appreciate everyone jumping on and joining. Hopefully this was helpful. Do your apps work with CMS outside of Shopify? The Google Tag Manager Suite app, that is Shopify specific. The Event Builder, the Chrome extension, based from the Elevar side, everything else is agnostic. It is not specific to Shopify. Another question, this was actually earlier, are we going to rebuild or build our Google Tag Manager Suite app for BigCommerce? Potentially, it's certainly something I've looked at. We do have a couple customers that are on BigCommerce that we're working with and doing an advanced data layer setup for them. On the app side, TBD. We have a lot of exciting plans for the Chrome extension that we're going to be doing some cool stuff in the next couple of months. So that's really our primary focus. Alrighty, any other questions? So there will be a replay of this. So we'll send the replay recording of it. We'll send examples of quizzes, send you a link to all the video training that we have. And I think there was something else, Scott, that we just mentioned. We'll send a link to Supermetrics for the connector.
Yeah, and the if statements, I'll send some resources around them, how to utilize those within Google Ads.
Okay, awesome. Question, is the codeless integration or the codeless Chrome extension based on CSS selectors? It is based on CSS selectors, so you basically select an area and we'll nest down. So if you want to tag like your entire navigation, you can just select the entire navigation and it'll nest down and grab any clicks underneath that. The triggers in the Chrome extension now are click triggers, page view triggers, visibility, so impression triggers. We are adding a form submission trigger to that. Like I said, we're adding a lot more advancements to that, but yes, it is CSS selector based. We do pull in variables as well. So all of your variables are pulled in so they can be used in the event action or event label if you want to pull those in. All right, we'll give a countdown. Not quite a countdown, but I appreciate everyone hanging on till the end here. Guess we'll call that. No more questions. So when I do send the email with a recap, if you do have any additional questions, just shoot me an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we'll just get you all these follow-up links. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And have a great weekend.
Lovely.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.